Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody joining us this evening. So glad that you could make it here. Once again, welcome to another Constitutional Considerations here on Tactical Review. Being joined again by Elias of the Liberty Review podcast. Elias, good evening. Great to have you.
Good evening. How you doing?
Oh, everything's crazy as ever. Definitely kind of have felt like somebody who forgot to do his homework and trying to do it all at the last minute. So,
yeah, I noticed that.
well, so I've mentioned in the past that I get a lot of my alerts for major news through Ammo Land, and somehow I got unsubscribed from their mailing list, and I realized today, as I was like, well, I need to brush up on that, and realized that I haven't had any emails from Ammo Land since last week, which isn't to say that I haven't seen any of the major headlines. I just didn't have any good way to go back and check on those. So before we get too deep into the weeds, though, I just want to make sure that everybody realizes the miracles do in fact still happen. And for Exhibit A, after only 29 days, my in-stock ammo order finally arrived from Bass Pro Shops. Until all of this is over, and maybe for a long time after that, this is probably my last online order from Bass Pro. Academy Sports, though, top notch, said it was in stock, and I think I had that 4 days later. So,
nice.
There we go. All right.
At least you got yours from Bass Pro.
Right. You had to cancel yours, didn't you?
I canceled mine. I got tired of waiting, and I found somebody else who's got it in stock for actually a little bit cheaper per round. And
well, that works out well.
Went that route. Yeah.
Yeah, I ended up, I placed a pre-order from Sportsman's Guide, I think it was, for some Steelcase 223 and Steelcase 762. Just the normal diet for the AK, and believe it or not, I am finally going to get underway with abusing that poor Palmetto State Freedom build. So, I really hate that I had to pay 25 cents a round for Steelcase, but those are the days we live in. I still refuse to pay 20 cents a round for Steelcase 9mm, because I'm still reliably finding brass 9mm for about 18 or 19 cents a round. So, that's current state of ammo prices for anybody who hasn't been shopping around.
Supply and demand.
Yep, and I'm not entirely going to hate on it, but there's, once again, if I can buy a brass case for the same price as steel case, I'm going to walk away with my brass, and I have enough people who I know who have reloading equipment and are willing to teach me, have already offered me the use thereof. So, hasn't been on social media yet. No, I haven't. I shared a picture with Elias. I wish that I could just get back here in the safe. Which side are we on? There we go. Get back in the safe and show you guys. But YouTube is terrible and won't let me. So instead, I will just show you the loaded magazine for the AKV. And we'll be doing some testing with that, because some of the things I've read say that they don't like standard hollow points. So we may end up, I may end up having to unload all these Spear Gold Dots and pick up some Hornady Critical Defense for the AKV. And for those of you who weren't able to draw the conclusions from Monday's static video, or if you haven't watched it, I have in fact ordered the Holosun 503, I believe it's the CU. It's the circle dot reticle Holosun 503 with the solar backup is the optic that I decided is going to at least start out on that AKV. So appreciate the feedback that I've gotten from that, and hopefully some of you guys were able to get some takeaway from that video. And if you haven't watched it yet, that is up on the channel. Let's see who's over here in the chat. We've got George Washington in the house. Sorry for what we've done to your country, sir. We thank you for your service. Randall Hill, and as mentioned, if you haven't looked back at the chat yet, yeah, you may or may not ever get notifications for live streams and premieres from YouTube. I really try to give some advance notice through Instagram and Facebook. I was really late with that this evening at 8:30. So,
Oops.
yeah, oops. But I can't tell you how often it is that I get notification that one of the channels that I watch, that they had a premiere and it's been over for an hour, and I just then got the notification. So unfortunately, and I don't know if it's just across the platform because YouTube is so monolithic now, or if it's just because they kind of suppress 2A stuff. It's hard saying. The answer is probably all of the above.
A little bit of both, yeah.
DB&D Farms. Elias. Well, hey, surprise. Something else that we'll touch on a little bit is Trump saying that processing is going to stay open. We talked about that on a side channel earlier, so keep that in the back of your mind. Seeing DB&D Farms made me think of that. Randall never got order from Bass Pro. Aim Surplus, Good Check Ammo, and Ninja Scout. Hi, welcome. Brownies is in the house. Brownies for my fat. I love brownies. I don't like being fat, so I do a lot of extra cardio so I can eat brownies. Warsaw Patriot in the house. And Ninja Scout and I were conversing a little bit over on the Zeke Shoots Discord, and I wish that I had some more info for you, Ninja, about things like, does it feed defensive ammo? You know, how does it play with this, that, or the other thing? And I don't know yet. I just took delivery on Monday, and I did not use yesterday's gorgeous weather to get out to the range, and I won't have decent weather again until Friday. So hopefully Friday, because I'm hoping to have some sort of introductory video on it up next week. No promises. So, all right. Let's see, what else do we have in the way of preview? Warsaw Patriot, every time he sees my AK, dies a little inside because of me having my red dot mounted in front of the front trunnion. And I really think that it's actually causing him physical discomfort, maybe even driving him towards seizures or something. So he turned me on to the TWS dogleg Picatinny top cover. It actually bolts in and secures up at the front sight block, similar to the Palmetto State unit that's on the AKV and the AK pistol. So the second gen version of it, I know that Rob Ski, it broke for him, but then he abused the crap out of a Gen 3. It didn't break, and I don't see anything else about it. But the Spetsnaz Alpha teams actually use the TWS railed top cover. So, I mean, I would think if anybody knew something about running an AK, it might be the Spetsnaz. So, then again, maybe not. Maybe they're just like our military, that it's like everybody wants to say, oh, this is mil spec, this is mil spec, and the rest of us are saying, yeah, that just means that it was the lowest bidder for the product.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why I laugh whenever I see anything that advertises as mil spec.
Oh, Warsaw is worried about heat. So, fun fact, I wish that I could grab my AK and show you this. The Palmetto State gas tube rail doesn't actually contact the gas tube at all. It's not like the Ultimac rails that are actually formed right to it. The Palmetto State unit actually is a railed gas tube cover, and then to prevent loss of zero, it tabs down into the lower handguard to index it. I might have to do like a teardown video and show.
So what you should have done is take the upper off, because that's not legally a firearm.
What? Do you not want your optic see? No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of two different things at once. Anyway, so yes, Ultimac rails can in fact burn up optics. because the Ultimac rail, the Picatinny rail, is riding directly on top of the gas tube. As a matter of fact, it gets hot enough that it will absolutely burn the crap out of your hand if you're not wearing a glove and you're doing like a C-clamp. I'm trying to figure out where this camera is looking at me. Trying to do a C-clamp grip. The Palmetto State, I like mag dumped 3 mags and I could still put my bare hand on top of that pick rail. So heat is less of a factor. It does look a little goofy with the optic that far forward. Luckily, we have, you know, unlimited eye relief for a red dot. So anyhow, enough kind of, I mean, it's firearms talk. It's a little off topic. Half of the show's off topic. So there we go. All right. Speaking of which, what were our topics tonight? Did we have topics? Topics.
I don't know. You came up
Right.
with some
Hey,
about
let's
10 minutes
start
ago.
with the Earn It Act. We're going to kind of revisit this. That is Senate Bill 339A, and we talked about this clear back in March, early March. That would have had to have been right. Matter of fact, yeah.
Yeah.
So what the Earn It Act basically is going to have the government putting in best practices for ISPs and social media platforms. Basically, so the government's going to be, they're going to put out best practices. So the government isn't directly going to be censoring free speech, but they're going to require all platforms to do so. And once again, just like all of these wonderful, wonderful things, it is for the safety of the children. It just has a whole bunch of stuff. Basically, it's going to force every company that offers encryption to be able to backdoor that encryption. There's a lot to it. So,
Right.
As a matter of fact, I had an action link for you guys to use to contact your representatives, and my representative actually got back with me on it. And I'm not going to read the entire response, but basically the way I read it, it was, hey, thanks for talking to me, but you're just basically a pedophile, and that's why you don't want this. So good to hear from you. Happy to serve your district, but screw you. So yeah, Elias, I forwarded that to you. Is that how you read that?
Yeah, it's pretty much one of those form letters that's, I know you're really against this. I don't care.
So,
I've already made up my
here's
mind.
The thing. Number one, when you get a response back like that, you need to look at your representative who is communicating back. You need to look at what their track record is. Because the fact of the matter is none of us are going to agree 100% on everything. We've talked about that. So with an otherwise good track record, you're going to have to determine for yourself how a negative response such as that affects your opinion. And it's definitely one of those that I'm going to keep that in mind in the primaries, which Indiana has pushed back. So anyway, fun stuff. And once again, this is allegedly for the children. That is a favorite rallying cry of tyrants everywhere, because then they can easily push that off as, well, this person hates children. This person wants to exploit children. So there's a meme floating around, how many kids have to die before you'd support gun control? All of them? I mean...
There's a manipulation.
So anyway, just thought I would kind of update you guys with that. I do try to communicate on the issues that I urge you guys to communicate with. Just like everybody, I can fail pretty good. Anyway, hey, Poor Conservative's here. How you doing, Poor Conservative? More government control, absolutely. So, Anyway, I don't know, Elias, have you heard back
And
from...
that's a Republican
Right.
senator too. So, you know,
Well, once again, okay,
neither side is a friend.
correct.
So,
Um, and there's also, and this may be something where we have to do some, where I may do some back and forth, because this may be an example of ignorance. Because this particular representative, or senator, I don't remember. Well, it'd be a Senate bill, so it'd be my senator, yeah, who is a government representative. But typically, when we say representative, right. Anyway, all that to say, this could be an example of this individual has fully bought into the fact that this is, in fact, strictly for the protection of the children, and does not understand how such a thing is undesirable for folks who desire liberty as well as our own personal safety. That's how you get stuff like the Patriot Act, which I know, Elias, is one of your pet aggravations. So,
yeah.
And as long as we are in the vein of things that are for the good, let's talk about House Bill 4271. Hot link coming at you guys. And yeah, this is one of those. So House Bill 4271, aka the Gun Suicide Prevention Act, introduced by Representative Brownlee of California. Seems like we just want to prevent suicides. The fact of the matter is that when you look at deaths by firearm, suicides far and away are the largest cause of death. Absolutely. Now, I have one problem I have right off the bat, though, is why are we so focused on just gun suicide? Suicide at all is terrible. So, automatically, in the eyes of a liberty-minded person, that should start raising some red flags as far as the verbiage. And it's one of those PR things, because on the surface, if you are contacting your representatives and saying, hey, I don't like this, it sounds like, well, then you think that people should just kill themselves.
Yep.
However, there is basically what this is wanting to do, though, is it is wanting to require, and again, if it stopped here, I don't know that I'd necessarily have a problem with it. It's wanting to update the Consumer Product Safety Act and require a label with every firearm that has the National Suicide Prevention Hotline's phone number on it. And in and of itself, I mean, granted, it's going to make things cost a little bit more because that's one more sticker that's got to be put in there. But by pushing this off into the Consumer Product Safety Act, they actually start moving towards the ability of taking anti-Second Amendment stuff out of government hands, legally speaking, and putting it into consumer groups, which are not regulated then by consent of the governed. So
yeah, it's a way to move it over to somebody who's not elected and is not held accountable to the people.
So, you know, I'm going to let everybody obviously make up your own mind, but if you're in the mood, you're reaching out to elected representatives as it is, House Bill 4271 is one that you might feel like mentioning. All right.
The good thing is that this one came out around September, and it was referred down to a subcommittee, and it's got 4 co-sponsors only. So that's the good side of it, is that it's been in committee since September, and they can't even get more Democrats on board. So,
well, here's the thing.
it's a silver lining.
Once again, it's an election year, so
Right.
I feel like we're going to see both sides of the aisle kind of maybe moderate just a little bit more. They don't.
Right, and
nobody wants
that's
to rock
the
the
thing
boat too much right now.
Yeah. Well, it's on one side, the ones that are in critical districts aren't going to want to put their name on something that's going to get them in trouble. And on the other hand, the ones who are in strong districts are wanting to be able to say, look what I tried doing.
Right.
That's kind of the silver lining. If some of this stuff is going to just sit there and they know it, but then they can at least go back and say it. The problem is that some of it is going to gain traction, like earn it.
Right.
And that's why you got to hit it quick.
Well, and this goes back to, again, why we need to dialogue with our representatives. Most of the time, I've got to be careful how I say this, but it goes back to ignorance and stupidity. Okay, ignorance is where you don't know. Stupidity is where you're unwilling to learn. And then arrogance is where you're unwilling to accept instruction from somebody just because of their station, as well as other things. Okay, this is a generalization. When it comes to a lot of us who are involved with this stream right now, we are more or less, especially in comparison to a lot of these elected officials, we are subject matter experts where it comes to Second Amendment stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that we know everything. Sometimes you just, something doesn't feel right. You can tell it's wrong, but you don't know why it's wrong. So I guess in that case, we're not subject matter experts. But by and large, when it comes to something like Earn It, Elias and I both work in the information technology sector. Either of us are much better versed to talk about encryption and why it's important than probably 98% of everybody in DC, maybe more than that. Most of those folks come from a legal background of some form or another. And, if you're ever bored, go to the Tales from Tech Support subreddit and just read where guys have had to support people who work in law firms. Lawyers and doctors tend to be, not always, some of them are very good at saying, my expertise is, the human body or this system of the human body. You're the computer guy. That's why I pay you. Fix it. But a huge number of those people, those people, that sounded racist, but a huge number of, I'd say anybody who has gone to school for 6 to 10 years, they start getting this complex that because they've gone to school for so long, that they're smarter than everybody else. And in their field, there's a good chance that that's absolutely true. But in my field, that's probably not true at all. So anyway, I hope that came across as what I'm saying is that when you're passionate about something or when it's your area of focus, there's a good chance when you look at everything that our representatives have to read through legislation about, there's a good chance that they don't know what they are voting on. Because it's impossible for them to be that well versed in everything.
But they're told that it's important. They're told that this is what they need to do.
Right. How many people across the country were absolutely appalled every time Apple denied law enforcement and the FBI backdoor cracks to iOS. But those of us in the technology community absolutely applaud that. Those of us who are highly interested in liberty absolutely applaud that. Not that we want terrorists to be able to communicate and do bad things, but
it's the same reason that the Fourth Amendment existed. Yes, there are some bad people that get off due to technicalities because the DA or the police didn't do things 100% by the book. But it was intended that way, to protect the innocent. Because as far as they were concerned, the framers, it was better to let a couple bad people go than to wrongly incarcerate even one good person. So it's that same kind of concept.
I prefer dangerous liberty over peaceful slavery. Anyway, I saw a little cup of Joe joined in. Education does not equate to intelligence, and Joe is a teacher. He can speak to that. Yeah, and you know, even experience doesn't always lead to intelligence. If we are not, I love the fact that you mentioned a supple mind, because you can absolutely stagnate in your ways. And even though at one point you were the subject matter expert, you are no longer.
Yep.
When I've worked in sales, I've worked with folks who were lead salesmen decades previous, and they never updated their approach to things. And you know, in the end, we're not good salesmen. So, and that's just.
Yeah, I've definitely got that. I've got things that I really used to know, and now I've forgotten it all. So.
Well, and then there's two parts to that. If you don't use the education, you lose it. My wife, for instance, when we started dating, when we were in our late teens, she actually had lived more years in Brazil, South America, than she had in the United States. She was the child of a missionary couple. At this point, so obviously she was fluent in Brazilian Portuguese. She doesn't have a predilection for Tauruses, though, I will say that. Anyway, but she still knows a handful of words. She can pick words out of a conversation if we're watching a TV show and you know they've got Brazilian speaking on the show. But she's no longer any place close to even conversational, let alone fluent. But then there's also the points where technology and understanding have moved forward. And so if you haven't been moving your education of a process forward, you're no longer. Mm-hmm. Well, Elias, you were a crew chief for the F-16. And what happened if a pilot let their flight hours get behind? What happened to them, their skills as a pilot?
Oh yeah, your proficiency is going to go down. Your proficiency is going to go down very quickly.
Yeah, anyway. So while I am grabbing, which one was this? You mentioned earlier today just a wonderful, well, let's back up, hang on. Last week we talked about, I believe it was Caliber Gun Store and Range down in New Mexico, who had said that the owner said, we're going to abide by the social distancing restrictions required for all retailers, but we are reopening our store. Elias, you shared with me a quote from the governor of New Mexico. I believe it was in response to that, and it was just fantastic. Yep. Would you care to share that with everybody playing the home game?
Oh yeah, this was actually from the spokeswoman for the governor's office, which said that, and I quote, "While we as an administration unequivocally support the constitutional right to purchase a firearm, we recognize that right does not correspond to a right to congregate in a store and infect neighbors and workers and public safety officers amid an unprecedented global pandemic." And the things that I was focused on was the part where it says, we recognize that that right does not correspond to a right to congregate. it doesn't really matter where the place is, because if anybody looks at the First Amendment, where you cannot congregate. So
Well, and the other thing is that what does it matter if you're in a gun store or you're in Walmart? Or what about the places where
yep.
they're roping off sections of your local stores that are open? Why does it matter if I'm at Walmart to buy a can of spray paint, body wash, another board game to pass time, a hammer, a box of cereal?
Yep.
Why does it matter? I'm already there. Why does it matter what I'm there for at that point? And the other thing is, I think that you mentioned this to me, that at this point in the stay-at-home orders, early on, closing all but essential stores was the concept. The concept was for people to not go out unless they had to go out. But at this point, everybody's basically getting cabin fever, and so now the opposite is occurring.
Yeah, my wife mentioned the fact that, when she does have to run to the store or whatever, that at the time of day, it's a lot busier than normal right now. And it seems like what's happening is because only so many places are open when people do want to get out and go do something. While there's a really nice outdoors where people can go, people have gotten into the habit of going to stores or going to malls or whatever. And well, now you've only got a couple stores that are open, so now everybody's going there. So what happens is you're getting a greater concentration of people in a smaller area now. So it's like, at this point, you know what? What's the point? People aren't going to stay home. They're going to go to those places that are still open and all that stuff to get out of the house and to get things, and they're not working, so they're that's pretty much where they're going to go.
Well, and then you have situations, something that I've tended to do. Not every time, but a lot of times, if I'm going to the store anyway, I make a stop up at my local farm store that I would not have made 2 months ago to see if they have any ammo on shelf and pick up another couple boxes of ammo if they do. And that's not 100% related to the stay-at-home order, but it is related then to the ammo scarcity that we're dealing with due to COVID-19. So, and early on, I think I mentioned 2 or 3 weeks ago, it took me 7 or 8 stops to buy what I normally would have purchased in one stop early in when people still weren't sure what was going to happen with supply chains and things. So, which seems like a good time to talk about what's happening with the meat processing plants. So many of you saw that, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, Elias? Trump's order.
I think that was last night, because I think I saw it in the news this morning.
There's so much stuff that's been happening lately.
Because it was after Tyson said they were going to start closing plants.
And if you guys haven't seen, I think it's been nationwide, but I know that in north central Indiana, both Tyson Foods and Packers, Indiana Packers, which is another pork processing plant, have both had massive infections. And there's a lot that's gone into that. Both locations were, well, I can't speak to Packers, I guess, but I know what Tyson Foods was doing is they actually were using infrared thermometers and taking the workers' temperatures as they were coming through the door. And medically speaking, there's a lot wrong with that situation. But anyway, obviously that did not work, and they have had a massive infection. Now, I can only assume that that is nationwide for Tyson, if they were talking about closing all of their locations. But then President Trump enacted the Defense Production Act. Is that it?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he used the defense production.
And is ordering the meat processing to stay open.
Now, the good thing is that by using the Defense Production Act, it also allows him to kind of divert some funds to them. So I know, for instance, Department of Labor is supposed to work with the companies to make sure that the people who are at the highest risk are not working pretty much, and they're taken care of. But it also allows them to divert funds and things like that to give more PPE and things like that to workers there. So it's not just you're going to keep coming to work and deal with it, but also to be able to take steps, hopefully. I know it frees it up. Whether or not the steps are actually taken or a whole nother matter, but at least does free up things to kind of help keep them,
right.
Not only them safe, but obviously they're handling food that people are going to eat later.
Right.
He's taken a lot of criticism for it, but the fact of the matter is, I mean, we saw runs on toilet paper at the beginning of this thing, and that was with everybody saying stores aren't going to close, and people were still putting a run on the stores. Now imagine you start shutting down food processing plants.
Right. And that trickles, and this is something that affects my community pretty severely, because I do live in a rural part of the world.
Yeah.
So the processing plants close. Well, now there's no place to send the livestock, so that affects the farmers who are raising it. That affects the truckers who would have transported them. If you're not moving livestock out and there's no future to move livestock out, you're not going to be buying new livestock, so that affects the nurseries. That in turn affects anybody who's in the breeding portion of it, if that's a separate group, or if and when that's a separate group. Obviously, any part of any production line can be a specialty. So we had farmers around my area who were very concerned about what this was going to mean for their livelihood. And that's part of our whole supply chain is just pretty broken. Right now we are having some shortages of PPE and medicines because that stuff's all produced in China, or a lot of it is. A few decades ago even, having national processing plants closed down wouldn't have necessarily affected tons of people, because most people were going to their local locker plants or buying direct from their farmers who were slaughtering themselves. Right. And now that's not happening. So for those of you who are able, I mean, this really kind of can help open our eyes to things that are broken in our society. What could you do that you're not doing? All right. I know personally, there's really no reason why I don't have a vegetable plot, except I usually allow myself to be too busy. And by and large, when I look at the time investment, it hasn't been worth it. Not that I can't, but that I don't. And 9 times out of 10, all right, through my whole life, as a matter of fact, this has never been a problem. But now it 100% is. And if this had gone even worse than what it did, if this goes even worse than what it has, I'm behind the 8 ball. Elias, how many times in the last 2 weeks have you and I talked about the things that we should have done different? Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this has been a huge kind of eye opener. It really should be, especially for anybody who wants to do more of like preparing and things like that. This is a good eye opener. You learn some lessons and go on.
So, anyway, if you have the opportunity, and I'd say realistically, most of us, if you're willing to drive, half an hour, 45 minutes, you can find some sort of local farmer's market. And you may not even have to drive that far. For meat, you might have to drive a little further. So, obviously, when you can take advantage of bulk purchasing, well, sure. But if you know of a local or relatively local farmer that also sells their livestock for food use, or what, heck, if you want to go buy a cow, go buy a cow. It's not necessarily a bad idea, because I was able to actually just buy like 20 pounds of ground beef direct from one of my local farmers. And if we don't keep supporting those local farmers, the next time this happens, that option may not be there. So, and one other thing, speaking of this, that I want to mention, I don't know if this is national, but I do know it's true in Indiana. My sister-in-law's family are dairy farmers, and as a matter of fact, they're on the dairy board, at least in the state of Indiana, and I'm sure it's national. If you see a store that is restricting your dairy purchases specifically, take a picture of that sign and reach out to your state's dairy board, because I can tell you in Indiana, we have farmers who have been having to dump milk, so the dairy board absolutely wants to know about that so they can go and talk to those retailers. And I can say that since the first week of projected scarcity, those signs have been absent from everywhere I've been for dairy. Household cleaning stuff, paper products, yeah, they're still there. And I know some places are still limiting canned goods, and there's been I haven't seen a pack of an actual case of ramen in 5 weeks. So anyway, Randall Hill has a broken tooth. You have my sympathies. I think maybe back pain. Back pain and toothache, those affect your entire body. So, I mean, a lot of things can, but definitely your back and your teeth. So you have my sympathies. I hope that you can get. Can't until Monday morning. Depending on which tooth it is and how it's broken. Okay, wait. I am not a medical professional. Nothing that you see or hear on Tactical Review constitutes medical or legal advice. Okay, I think that covers me. Anyway, my wife has broken molars in the past, and CVS sells these little bitty tubs of temporary fillings. So I don't know if that will help you or not, but you might be able to cap that so you don't have an open nerve. I don't know. That has worked for my wife. I do know that. I actually helped her build half of a tooth one time. It was crazy. Anyway, back to okay. Let's go down to good old Jackson, Mississippi, where Jackson Mayor Chokwe, is that right? Chokwe Lumumba. That's, boy, I'm sure I butchered that name. Anyway, Mayor Lumumba issued an executive order suspending open carry of firearms, whether that be carried in a sheath, belt holster, shoulder holster, purse, handbag, satchel, similar bag or briefcase, or fully enclosed case, with such pistol, revolver, or firearm being wholly or partially visible. So if I happen to have any viewers from Mississippi, specifically Jackson, although I'm pretty sure anywhere in Mississippi you need to start contacting your state congressmen and representatives over this, so that they can strike this down. Because, where is it? Hang on, I'm going to find their local state statute. Elias, you don't know that, right?
Yeah, I'm actually looking right now. They do have preemption law.
Article 3, Section 12 of the Mississippi State Constitution says the right of every citizen to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, or property, or in aid of the civil power when thereto legally summoned, shall not be called in question. But the legislature may regulate or forbid carrying concealed weapons. So to me, that sounds like almost constitutional open carry with a permit-regulated concealed carry.
Yeah, so let's see. It says that no county or municipality may adopt any ordinance that restricts or requires the possession, transportation, sale, transfer, or ownership of firearms. However, local governments may regulate the discharge, the carrying of firearms at a public park or public meeting, or the use of firearms in case of insurrection. So it doesn't look like they can actually do anything, because as long as it wasn't a public park or a public meeting.
So that said, the mayor could step back and say, okay, well, you cannot open carry at a park or at any. Of course, what are they calling a meeting? Is this only
public meeting? I think usually has to do with like
Gotcha.
city hall meetings, city council meetings, things like that are usually considered quote unquote public meetings.
Yeah, to me it sounds like the mayor needs to be put in place and probably voted out. This is somebody who grossly overestimates the amount of power that they have. So I just saw that Brastard762 is in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. And saying clove oil mixed with coconut oil works great on tooth problems. Okay. I've actually heard about using clove oil, and then the coconut oil, I guess, would thicken it and make it stay in place a little bit better. I like coconut oil. In fact, I like the cheap coconut oil from Aldi's that actually smells and tastes of coconut. So the slightly more expensive stuff is more like Crisco. It doesn't actually smell or really taste of coconut. So for some people, they really like that. I like the taste of coconut, so I prefer the stuff that, yeah. Anyway, fun facts. That's what happens when you have done a keto diet, is you start learning what really fatty things you like. The answer is all of it. A diet that lets you eat all the bacon you want? Yes, please. Anyway, I've got, what's this? We've got a house. Oh, I was informed, by the way, that I have been messing up my terminology on these different bills and stuff. HR with a number is actually a House of Representatives bill versus a House resolution, which is what I've been calling them. Elias, what's the difference between a bill and a resolution then?
It really depends. Sometimes they're synonymous. For instance, a joint resolution is synonymous with a bill, which is a joint resolution between the Senate and the House. Then you have a concurrent resolution, which is usually used for things like amendments and things like that. Or concurrent resolutions will keep the budget going when they can't agree on a new budget. And then you just have plain House resolutions, which have absolutely no force of law whatsoever and is pretty much just made to make somebody feel better.
So it's not a bill except for when it is a bill. Remember that at home.
Correct.
I love how transparent our government is. It makes it so much easier to be. Okay, anyway, so we have an actual resolution now. House Resolution 702. And on here, let me just drop you guys a link to this. Copy a link address. There we go.
Yeah, a lot of times another thing a House resolution can do, and this might be an example of what you're dropping down in here, is an attempt to drive policy, an attempt to get the House to a certain point in terms of policy and start looking at something. which is what I think this one is sort of
So
driving at.
this thing, it's 31 pages long, okay? And once again, anytime stuff like this gets over a certain length, you start wondering, yeah.
How many people have their hands in the
Well,
cookie
how
jar
many
on this
people have
one?
their hands in the cookie jar? How many people are going to read all the way through it? If they do, I mean, let's face it. Okay, I can legitimately say, this calendar year, I have read thousands of pages, mostly of fiction, but there's been several nonfiction books in there as well. Last week I read 13 Hours in Benghazi. Right now I'm working my way through Black Hawk Down. I've read the collected Dark Tower series this year. By and large, okay, I'm grasping everything. There's details that I'm not going to get, but this stuff is all narrative driven. Even the nonfiction stuff is written in a way to be able to take it and digest it. Legal documents, you're not going to make them interesting.
I think there's a law somewhere that says legal documents have to be extremely dry and
right, but if you read that
boring.
law, you wouldn't grasp that from it because it would be half in Latin.
You would, by the time you got through it, you would already be.
Right.
Never mind. We're not going to talk about the earlier bill.
So anyway, this 31-page document, you get to pages 25 and 26 before you get to the parts. Now, the first bits of it have a lot of facts. Anyway, and so this document wants to reduce gun violence by regulating manufacturers. Now, keep in mind, there are extreme regulations on manufacturing firearms for sale. Depending on what state you're in, maybe a little bit less so on manufacturing firearms for your own personal use, i.e. polymer 80s, i.e. 80% AR lowers. Now, some states regulate those more greatly than others, but you know, in Indiana, if I wanted to go to the hardware store and buy the stuff to build a slam fire pipe shotgun, I could do that. I might do it just to say I did it. I don't know. Anyway, but that's not for sale. If I then decide, say you've assembled a polymer 80, I don't remember what their actual model number is, but the Glock 19 compatible polymer 80. You put that together, you use it for a while, and you decide, you know, I've already got 2 other Glocks, and when you have 1 Glock, you've got every Glock, so I'm going to sell this to my buddy. At that point, legally speaking, you cross over into a different area where you are now manufacturing for sale, and that's a whole different set of regulations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact of the matter is if you've built one and you want to sell it, I don't feel like the government has any business getting involved in that. But, you know, law of the land is that they do. Regardless. Anyway, this document goes further to call for limiting firearm productions and sales, including a permanent ban on assault-type weapons. Now we're getting into this again. Assault is a verb. If I shoot you with a BB gun, it is technically now an assault weapon. Because I have assaulted you with this weapon. If I hit you over the head with a 3-pound sledgehammer, that hammer is become an assault weapon. Because I guarantee you, in the eyes of you and the law, when I've swung that hammer at you, it is a weapon.
Right.
Anyway, she's also calling for a mass gun buyback program. So I'm personally exempt from that. I have not purchased any of my firearms from the government, so they can't buy them back. There's that. Anyway,
The sad thing is there's actually good things in here. For instance, if you scroll down a little bit, it actually has, but this is kind of normal. You get some good nuggets in there. Further down, they actually have a thing about prioritizing. No, I'm sorry, wrong one. It was way further down. Providing, let's see, banning law enforcement use of facial analytics technology, including surveillance techniques and risk assessment software that are subject to algorithmic bias. So there's actually some good things in here. That's the sad part.
So, as somebody who is better versed than I am, Elias, is this something that we reach out to our representatives and say, I have problems with House Resolution 706, is that what it was? Specifically, I have problems. 702. And you say specifically, I take issue with this. See, once again, how do you word that?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can sit there and you can let your representative know, hey, I think that this resolution's a little bit kind of, honestly, in my opinion, the resolution's bad in general. Not because there's bad parts in it, but because they took a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of different initiatives, and they crammed them all.
It's really omnibus, is what you're saying.
So it's just badly written. Yeah, and so I don't think it's bad to say, hey, I just think this is way too wide of a net to cast in a resolution. Having said that, I also wouldn't sweat over it too much. This is not a binding resolution. The Senate will never even see this resolution because it is a House resolution where they're pretty much saying, here's what I think we should focus on, which this Congress is up in less than a year. The 116th Congress ends in January. So, yeah, whatever. To me, it really, really screams campaign. That this is a campaign tactic. And that's a whole different story about how messed up our system is. But this is a campaign tactic because if you actually, let's see, if you go back all the way, here's what it says. Resolved that it is the sense of the House of Representatives that the time is now for the federal government to begin a large-scale effort to reshape the American legal system. That's all they're saying. Well, we think that we should fix something.
I think they should fix a lot of things.
Campaign tactic. Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what this is. It's saying we think that we should fix something. So vote for us in November. This is a campaign tactic. So while I think it is good to let the representatives know, for one thing, remind them that, you don't agree with half the stuff in here, or a quarter, or three-quarters. No two of us are the same, and we all have different things. Like I said, when I look through there are things I totally agree with and things I completely disagree with. So I think it's good to remind them, hey, here's what I agree with, here's what I disagree with, so that they remember for their campaigns coming up. But it's not something that I would really sweat over, or, like you were saying earlier, talking to the senator more about that one bill, the Earn It bill. This is one where I would say it's not worth it to engage multiple times. One time, remind your representative, remind your congressman how you feel about it, and then that's it. Because it is just a resolution. It has absolutely nothing beyond that, beyond being a campaign tactic. But it reminds them about their own campaigns coming up.
So, and Randall Hill's over here, he's talking about AR, doing an 80% AR. My big problem with doing an 80% AR is that I don't have the hardware, the equipment to finish it. I keep looking at maybe picking up a Gen 2 Ghost Gunner desktop CNC machine because the Gen 2s are now, I've seen them on eBay a couple of times for the $1,200 mark. My thing is, you would think that since there's a lot of milling yet to be done and there's no registration of the lower with the ATF, that an 80% would be cheaper, and in fact they tend to be more expensive. So anyway, there's that. And
well, and that goes back to that supply and demand. If fear is what's being used, if you are able to convince the people that the government's about to ban it, that fear drives it up, which means the demand for it drives it up, which means now you get to
Right.
drive the price up. And I'm with him. I'm with Randall. I mean, I'd like the idea of just being able to do my own just
Right.
to do it.
Or there's
I think it's kinda
situations.
fun.
So part of the reason that I did a polymer 80 build was just because I had a completed Glock slide that didn't have a frame, grip frame to ride on, and so by the time it was all said, it saved me a trip to the FFL. There's a lot to that. That goes back to, though, I feel like I should be able to get on Palmetto State's website and pay them my money, and they should be able to drop ship it straight to my house. I think, I think that every firearm should have an optional third position on the selector, and suppressors should. You should be able to just put all that in your cart and hit buy it now, and a week later.
Well, especially things like what you said, suppressors. There's no reason why we should be paying a tax stamp for suppressors and additional ATF paperwork. That makes no sense
actually,
whatsoever.
Monday when I went to my FFL to pick up my AKV, we talked for a little while, and we talked suppressors because he is an SOT FFL. So I was talking to him. I'm kind of looking at a Liberty Cosmic based on Mr. Guns and Gears reviews. It's a 45 caliber can. Actually, I think it's a 46 caliber can. It's rifle rated. It's rated for 300 blackout down to 8 inches. So I should be able to use it on my 300 blackout gun. There's a lot of reasons. With that $200 permission slip.
No.
I can't see.
Well, and that's the thing is, here's the thing. The gun does damage whether it's suppressed or it's not. So I'm not really sure what.
Well, it's like, why is a short
regulating suppressors to the extent they do? I don't understand the point of it.
Well, it's like short barrel rifles, though. Honestly, legitimately speaking, a short barrel rifle doesn't do the same damage that its full length counterpart does. It's more concealable, is what they would say, but
I'm not. That's the only thing I can think of is concealable. Well, if I'm going to be in a position where I want that, I'm probably not going to carry a rifle around. I'm going to carry something like a 45.
Right.
For me, I'd love to have a silencer for inside the house, because if I ever needed it in the middle of the night, I really don't want to wake up my kids with that kind of noise. So you know what? It'd be kind of nice to just be able to use a silencer and then call the cops quietly.
And let's be honest here. Take my 300 blackout AR. Even with a suppressor on it, my ears are still going to be ringing. It's probably still going to be 100. Well, first shot with port pop and everything, odds are it's going to be like 146 decibels, as opposed to, on a guess, 165 to 180. And it's a logarithmic increase. One decibel increase is huge amount volumetrically. Okay, and we're geeking out, and this is stuff but anyway, I would like to be able to talk to the individual at the other end of the phone call that I have to make after somebody has made the mistake of coming into my home.
Right.
Anyway, that's the NFA, hashtag repeal the NFA. All there is to it. But we were just talking about things that need fixed, and then we talked about the NFA, which needs fixed. So let's talk about a recent attempt to fix something. And Elias, I think this is one of those points that you and I don't entirely see eye to eye, but that's okay. The Supreme Court last week, or earlier this week, hang on, there was a case going to the Supreme Court about a law from New York wherein they were, hang on.
Oh, the one where they were telling them you couldn't like leave the
Right.
city limits or something like that to take it to a range. Right. Yeah. The Supreme Court chose not to rule. They actually heard the arguments, but
Right.
then they
Well,
didn't
they
rule
said
on
that
it.
the case was moot because New York
Right.
changed the law. So,
Which was what the New York lawyers were arguing, was that because they actually got slapped. New York City got slapped by the state
right.
for doing that.
So
So
so the Supreme Court was saying since the law has been changed, there is nothing on which to rule.
right.
I disagree because the ruling then would have been to set precedents.
Right. The problem is that historically, Supreme Court, you can't set a precedent without something to set a precedent on. And when the law no longer exists, and that's what I was saying. I don't really think it's so much a thing of disagree. I was actually hoping they were still going to make a ruling. It's more of I can understand why they said we can't do it. Now I don't know if there's a something that says they're not allowed to, or if it's just that's what the court's always done, and so that's what the precedent is. I'm not sure which one it is, whether or not they're but I understood why. I was disappointed too.
Okay,
but
so
I
we
understood
don't
why.
disagree then on that. It was,
No. It was just that I can understand why they did it. I do like the fact that the state kind of smacked them around the city.
well,
That was kind of nice.
if I
and surprising.
remember correctly, because it wasn't just about traveling outside the city limits to go to a range. The way the law was worded, it would have actually prevented somebody from transporting a firearm to a second residence or a vacation home or anything like that.
I think so, yeah, because pretty much it just restricted them moving the firearm at all.
It was very egregious.
And I think the state knew. that was going to bring some problems. And they just didn't want it.
So, see, but this, and here again, this is where you got to watch your headlines, because the headline from 2 days ago says Supreme Court sides with New York City in transport case. So
yeah, no, it didn't side. It just didn't make a ruling.
Anyway, so once again, you get out to the coasts and your Second Amendment right kind of evaporates. It's not right, but it is what it is. So let's head to the other coast now. And last Thursday afternoon, okay, famously, back in, was it January? That feels right. California had a temporary ruling by Judge, well, it wasn't meant to be temporary, but it turned out to be temporary. Judge Benitez instituted what is now in the history books known as Freedom Week, where the magazine capacity limits were abolished for a very short amount of time, and the good people of California bought every magazine in the United States.
I can't blame them.
Well, shortly after that, the California government enacted all sorts of restrictions on buying ammunition. So in California, they actually have to go to an FFL to buy ammunition. They have to pay for a background check. It's a mess. It's disgusting. It's absolutely an infringement. And so last week, I believe that the decision was handed down on Thursday afternoon. Judge Benitez, let me see if I can find so there was an injunction that suspended the ammunition restrictions. By Friday afternoon, this was appealed to the Ninth Circuit, and in Friday evening, there was an emergency motion for a stay. So they ended up, the people of California were hoping for Freedom Week 2, the Electric Boogaloo, and instead they got Freedom Day, and as a matter of fact, now things are muddy because, of course, they bought out anything that was still left in stock for ammunition within that, like, 15 hours that they had. And so honestly, most of those orders probably were still pending fulfillment by the time that the stay was granted the next evening at 9 p.m. Just based on the way that orders have been going. Once again, last week I ordered ammunition from Academy Sports on a Monday. I did have it by Friday, but that means that it didn't ship until like Wednesday. So now there is legal muddy waters as to whether or not those orders that were placed during that window can be shipped to the people at home, or if they have to be rerouted to FFLs. I know that some retailers are erring on the side of caution and contacting those buyers to work out an FFL. Some are erring on the side of freedom and saying, screw the government. This was placed during that open window, and that's personally kind of how I feel about it. The law of the land, when that order was placed, says that that order was legal. I say ship it through. But that's because I think that, once again, I should be able to get on Palmetto State Armory and buy the PSM1A1 and have a nice, turbine jet engine tank sitting out in my driveway within, 2 to 3 weeks. So, Elias,
It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm hoping that maybe there's some disagreement within the courts so that we can finally get a Supreme Court ruling on it, because Supreme Court still hasn't ruled on things like magazine limits and stuff like that. The last I saw, I know Colorado Supreme Court was considering reversing it.
Well, I'll tell you guys, if you guys are really interested in following up on some of this, Gun Guy TV, if you go through the YouTubers that I'm following or that I'm subscribed to, you'll find Gun Guy. That's Joel Persinger. He is actually out in California, and so obviously he covers all of this stuff with great interest. And he's had some really good videos on this where he's actually had live streams with legal experts and people who are raising the lawsuits and representatives of those folks. And so I think that'll give you a little bit better of a grasp on it. The way I understand it, the Ninth Circuit actually, for appeals like this, they have a rotating it's like 3 judges that they rotate whether or not they're on this.
Right.
And that is actually there may be, so Judge Benitez, firmly pro 2A, he wrote a 120-page document on how this does nothing to stop criminals and absolutely just infringes on the rights of law-abiding citizens. 100% accurate. But I think that the stay was granted in hopes that the current judges who would rule on this are going to cycle out, and the next group may be more liberty-minded. I don't know. Because whatever they rule actually sets the law for the entire Ninth Circuit. And so this could be a situation that could end up being very pro-liberty for basically the entire Western Seaboard. Because if the Ninth Circuit then says, no, you can't require background checks for ammunition, you can't put all this undue burden for buying ammunition, then Oregon and Washington State, they can't have they can't have state legislators getting all uppity and trying to do the same thing. So George
Right.
Washington, welcome back. Boy, what did you miss? A whole bunch of infringement nationwide. What did we have in the way of...
Ew.
Yeah, what did we have in the way of good news this week, Elias? I'm trying to think back. Yeah, it was all just a bunch of heartache and sorrow. Hey, wait.
Yeah, nothing great.
I've got good news for you guys. I've got good news, and here, I'll just... So,
You're giving away a gun?
that is... I'm giving away 2 guns when I hit 500 subscribers.
That would be good news.
So, George, I don't think it's quite meeting your Musket A4 yet. We need some folks who have some brain cells in the courts, and so yeah, go ahead and sharpen up your bayonet.
Might as well get the musket.
Anyway, so stay at home is still in effect here in Indiana. And so, but I don't know for how long, okay? Once again, we are starting to look towards trying to get things opening back up. So...
It really sounds like the governor's talking about Friday. So he's been talking a lot about Friday.
So, I can't guarantee when this limited time offer ends, but you have until possibly just 2 more days. Maybe another couple of weeks. I don't know. I cannot guarantee. But you have a limited amount of time to pick up your social distancing tactical review t-shirt. Mine is on the way. I wish I had it on tonight. I am at the mercy of Teespring for that. But if you want to commemorate your time under quarantine and celebrate your Second Amendment rights, as well as helping out the channel, make sure to get that ordered. Link to the Teespring store is in the description. Link directly to the t-shirt is in my Instagram bio. So, no, I do seriously appreciate all of the support, even when it's just likes and subscribing and sharing the videos. I really appreciate how supportive the community has been. You guys are awesome. Mark 18 saying it was just announced there's a nationwide lift on social distancing.
Not quite. It looks like the guidelines from the federal government will expire. That they're not as of right now. It doesn't look like they're going to extend the guidelines, but it is up to the states to decide the stay-at-home orders and the business closings and stuff like that.
Well, and here's another thing, and this is something that we may, Elias and I have friends that we definitely have to continuously remind of this. So you may have family members, you may have friends. Just because your state lifts the social distancing, the stay-at-home requirement, doesn't mean that you have to go right out to a restaurant the next day. See, that's the beautiful thing about liberty. Now, you may have to go back to work, and if that's the case, just do your due diligence. Let's look at, Walmarts and grocery stores. I have yet to see anything. There's been a couple of Amazon warehouses where they've had outbreaks. But where's the news story about a huge outbreak nationwide at Walmarts? I haven't seen it. All right, so if you have to go to work, use your common sense. Use your good hygiene. That is what it is.
Pretty
but
much.
Nobody's saying that you have to go out clubbing the very next day. Nobody's telling you to go to your local restaurant and lick the flush handle on the toilet. That's liberty. That's liberty. So, anyway, yes, George Washington 400 meters is in fact social distancing. But if you need to get out further, the Barrett 50 caliber will in fact help you social distance out to like 1 mile to 2 miles, depending on windage and how good you are at determining the Coriolis effect. So. A little critical thinking goes a long way. That's that is exactly where our country is swirling the toilet, because most people don't have that anymore. So, you know, I can't think of anything major that is coming to mind. If there's something that I needed to cover that we didn't, go ahead and throw that in the chat. There is a good possibility that Elias and I have talked about it in the last 7 days and it just fell through the cracks. So if you, okay, and once again, George Washington mentioned clear back at the beginning at around 8:30 that his YouTube notifications were messed up for the stream. That's pretty much par for the course. So I would recommend that you guys also follow me either on Facebook or Instagram if you are a social media type person. I post a lot of things over there, but I also always try to make mention when I've got a video premiere coming up or a live stream. And I'm not always the most successful. Again, today I forgot to put that post up until about 8:30. So yeah, anyway, so while you're at it, following people on social media, also head over to Facebook and look up Liberty Review 1776 over there. And Elias mentioning a side channel. Yes, you may. Yeah, there's a major news story.
We forgot all about this. I just got reminded about it from someone else right now, about the fact that we didn't mention Hitler in New York. I'm sorry, de Blasio? Is that the mayor's name?
Yeah, let me...
Hitler de Blasio. It's really hard to tell with that tweet he put out today.
Yeah, let me find that. This is... If you guys missed it, anti-Semitism, like 100. Like he is max
in New York City of all places.
Yeah,
this is where it's said.
Yeah, hang on. I've got to scroll back because there's been a lot of conversation today. DIY Viking tactical sling. That's a thing that's going to be coming. There is that's not it either. Let me know if that's something that you guys would like to see. I actually picked it up from another YouTuber, so I can do a how-to video on it. I can just link you guys, but if you guys are interested, I have found instructions on how to do a DIY Viking tactical type sling. So yeah, just kind of let me know and we can maybe take a look at that. And I just about have this set up because I cannot do this justice, so I'm just gonna have to put it on screen for you guys. Many apologies. Yeah, I absolutely. This is just special. That's
what I thought too when you sent it to me this morning.
Well, I woke up and found this on my Instagram feed, and I just went back to sleep. This is yeah. Here, I'm just gonna I'll cover my face with this and just let Elias talk about this. There you go. I will read it. I will let Elias respond here. From Mayor Bill de Blasio. My message to the Jewish community, and all communities, at least he was inclusive with it, is this simple. The time for warnings has passed, I have instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest those who gather in large groups. This is about stopping disease and saving lives, period.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like some familiar rhetoric from around 1938.
That's,
and it's in a city with like the highest Jewish population in the country. Now, his comments later were, I was just really angry, and because apparently what had happened was there was a funeral with a bunch of Jewish, it was a Jewish funeral, and they would not disperse. They were, having the funeral for somebody who had died, and yeah, pretty much that's where this came from, and he got really mad, and apparently he has decided that Trump's method is the right way to do it, and he decided to go on Twitter and write that, and probably the worst possible language he could have done.
yeah, that's...
I mean, besides the fact that we can't be arresting people in the first place for assembling, but to actually, say it that way is just wow. And speaking of which, we're going to start seeing more of these lawsuits. Illinois legislature is taking a lawsuit against the governor for the stay-at-home order stuff. But yeah, just to say, we're going to arrest you because you're in a group mourning somebody who has died.
Well, and here's the other thing is, that would be like, to me, okay, and so, once again, I reserve the right to be wrong, but from my observations, that would be like threatening to arrest part of the Amish population. They really keep to themselves.
Yeah.
So, really, they're not... Okay, it could stress the system. I'll grant you that. But by and large, as far as spreading the illness, they're going to be spreading it within their own community. Yep. Oh, yeah, Brownies says that doesn't sit right. And, yeah, absolutely. I read that, and like I said...
Oh, yeah, you're not the
only one. Like I said,
one.
I just about turned over and said, okay, we're not doing Wednesday this week. I will wake up again tomorrow, and we will try again. That was literally how I started my day, and I just...
And it was a funeral for a rabbi, which is part of the reason why it was such a large crowd.
So, yeah. Anyway, good for you throwing and all other communities. So, yeah. And man, I don't have this one pulled up because just looking at that story made me think of this, where there was a state where there were some like beauticians who do home haircut services, etc., etc.
Oh, Texas.
Yeah, in Texas. And so these people these ladies were advertising beautician services in their homes, and the police departments actually wasted resources setting up stings to go arrest you. So we are going to release criminals, and we're going to say that we are basically, if it's not rape or murder, don't bother calling the cops. We won't be responding during this pandemic. But then we're going to set up a sting so that people aren't doing haircuts.
To capture people doing haircuts and nail appointments. Well, it's like, okay, come on.
In the state of Indiana,
that's...
Okay, I have, I think, 3 ladies in my church who are licensed cosmologists. That's it. Yeah, I about.
No, cosmologist. I thought the cosmologist was the one that went into space.
Cosmetologists, beauticians.
Cosmopolitans?
They're licensed beauticians.
There you go.
We're going to go with that one. Cosmetics. Cosmetologist. That's what it is. Yep. I about put them in the Russian space program, I think. They're licensed cosmonauts. Anyway. They actually received letters from the Indiana State licensing body, for beauticians and cosmetologists and whatnot, that they are not even allowed to sell product from their home. So, because
which is really disappointing to
right,
me
because
about Indiana, because overall I thought Indiana handled this well, but that's disappointing.
yeah, because there were some of them there, they were kind of using that to stay afloat. You know, okay, I can't do cuts and colorings and manicures and whatever, but I can at least sell some product and make that little bit of money that I make on my markup.
Well, and that's my thing. If you're doing it from home, I mean, come on.
Right.
Really, do we really need to be enforcing that stuff from home? I can understand in the stores, people, congregating, which of course we already handled that part of it. But in your home, you're not going to have 30 people in your house. You're going to have one at a time.
You know what? I sent out the stuff to the winners from my 250 sub giveaway. I probably need arrested for that. I shipped some stuff to you, Elias. I guess we're both going to jail.
Don't tase me, bro.
All right. Okay, good times. Good times. Lots of infringements. I'm sure we will have many more for next week.
The first, the second, where we at? I think the guy running for Democrat nominee for governor of Indiana wants to violate the third, fourth, and fifth. Just throw them all in there.
We don't need that pesky Bill of Rights. Yeah, we will all.
Don't say that too loud. There are some who actually do feel that way.
We will all be much happier if we will just be subservient to the government.
Actually, there was a was it the New Jersey governor or mayor or something like that where he was asked, before he made his declaration or whatever, did he consult the Constitution? He goes, no. He goes, well, you didn't look at the Constitution, Bill of Rights? He goes, I don't need the Bill of Rights. I didn't look at it. So, you laugh, you joke, but yeah, unfortunately, that is what's happening.
I sincerely hope that voters in those municipalities remember this. If
they're allowed to vote.
Yeah, that's sorry.
That's a whole other thing with happening in New York.
Sorry, guys. If we're safe to go to Walmart, we're safe to stand 6 feet apart and go to the polls. I don't care what the status of the situation is.
Yeah.
And that pesky little card that we have to drive. Maybe we should, show that or other state-issued photo ID to cast a vote. Just double check that we are who we say we are.
No, that's all right. They're gonna just do mail-in. That can't possibly go wrong.
Well, it'll make it easier for dead people to vote.
Well, I don't want to go too far off at this point, but I will say one thing I am concerned about is that no matter who loses, if it's mail-in vote, no matter who loses, it's going to be cries of corruption.
Oh my gosh! And we thought hanging Chad was bad here a few years back.
Yeah, no, this is going to be far worse than Chad and what he could do.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, on that happy thought.
We're just full of fun tonight.
Oh yeah, man, we don't even have like some sort of strong 2A win or something like that. This is just
been a disappointing week.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. The weather.
Hang on, I'm going to see real quick. Let's see, can I find win for Second Amendment this week?
I mean, Freedom Day looked like a win. I know last Thursday I thought that was incredible, and then Friday comes around and it was already shot down. So there's that. Anyway, Joe, I appreciate you joining, and I do not begrudge you the fact that you got in some rounds of Call of Duty. I absolutely use Call of Duty and all of those games to build your wish list to fill your safe. That's the best thing you can do. It absolutely is. So, guys, definitely keep your ears to the rails. Anytime that there is something that needs to be brought up especially in a Wednesday live discussion, you can absolutely email me, tacticalreview@protonmail.com. If it's something that you feel like needs a special video, reach out to me. Hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. I do my best to respond when I see those notifications. if you commenting on the videos, again, YouTube's notifications are messed up, but I do try to check through my new comments every couple of days, just watching for that. So anyway, make sure that you are following Elias. I have had a sneak preview of an upcoming episode and really good stuff. So you will want to get over to libertyreview1776.com and make sure you're watching for his new episodes. Elias, what else do you have?
Hopefully tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. Okay.
That's what I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm trying to get it out tomorrow morning. We're going to talk about police militarization. I finally finished editing that audio.
So, yeah, that's about it. Like I said, make sure to follow the channel over on Facebook and Instagram using that username right there. If you did not give a thumbs up, we would appreciate that. Definitely make sure that you're sharing the channel. Once again, you guys are amazing. Last time I looked, it was up to 312 subs. At 500 subs, we are doing the next giveaway. So I've got some ideas, tentative stuff. So it's stuff that I would like to win, except that I'm not eligible because I work for Tactical Review, I guess. So
you're gonna rig your own giveaway.
Anyway, and then by the time we do another Constitutional Considerations or Tactical Review Live, whichever it ends up being, I always appreciate you joining, Elias, but I know sometimes you can't. We will be into the month of May. May is Stop the Bleed month. So be paying attention to North American Rescue, or I don't remember who makes the soft T wide. So anyway, I will be watching my social media, be watching all of your various retailers like Primary Arms and Brownells and those places for promo codes for your medical gear. If you do not have a tourniquet as part of your EDC, you should. Next month is the perfect month to get that completed because, again, with the national focus, there are always promo codes and stuff. So I will be sharing what I can find, and I might even do a giveaway for a tourniquet or two, just because I really feel like it's probably a more critical part of your EDC even than your firearm, just because
it's a good thing to have.
I talked about it last year on my EDC video. I plan an updated EDC video coming up soon, because my EDC is always evolving, as I'm sure all of you guys are. Anyway, you are more likely to end up being the first person at the scene of an accident or construction site issue, whatever. You're more likely to be in a trauma situation where you need a tourniquet than you are to need a firearm. And God forbid you ever need either one, but it's always good. Just like if you ever need your firearm and don't have it, you're in a lot of trouble. If you ever need a tourniquet and don't have it, you have a good chance of being in a lot of trouble. But maybe only for about 2 or 3 minutes. So anyway, next month is the month to be watching for that. I think that regardless of subscriber count, I will be planning on doing a giveaway for a tourniquet, and maybe even little old me can reach out and get that sponsored, but maybe not. Anyway, all right. Well, you guys are talking Call of Duty and World of Tanks, so I'm going to let you guys get to your outside entertainment. Elias, thanks again for joining. Anything that you need to let the people at home know before we close? All right. Well, guys, until next week, thanks for watching. Shoot straight and stay safe.